Hello, and my name is Todd DeCapua. Today is the 31st of July, 2017. I am thrilled to be here as part of the Perf Guild and wanted to take a few minutes to share some ideas with you around the 4 ways to get started with effective performance engineering. As we get into this topic, you'll see a bit of an agenda that will cover some of the pieces we'll be speaking about. Really, I was hoping to cover things that are going to be important to you. So you can see that we're going to start with why performance engineering, then get into what are 4 ways that you can get started today in moving into that direction of effective performance engineering, and then how can I start doing it. So again, as we think about that, I'm going to show you a brief demo that should just take a couple of minutes. There's 3 different products that are free that you can download, start using immediately. Again, in this demo, it should only be a couple minutes long, but what I'm going to show you is exactly how you can do that to get started, leveraging some very effective performance engineering practices. And then, of course, at the end, we'll have some time for some questions. So as we kind of get into this why performance engineering and why is that a very important and relevant topic now, we get into this concept of a maturity model. So I'm going to in no way talk about this as a, you need to be a certain level of performance engineering. It's going to differ for you. It's going to differ for your organization. And as we look at this, this is meant to really be something that you could bring to the table to have a conversation as you look to adopt some of these performance engineering practices, really focusing on that high performance and the value delivered to your business. So in this model, again, this is one representative model, is starting first with kind of what might be considered a level 1, where you're just focused on load testing, so trying to break a system. Then as you move to the right, you can see getting into more performance testing, then introducing some performance analytics, then getting into lifecycle virtualization, and then ultimately landing in performance engineering. So this meant to be kind of that maturity model, kind of looking to where organizations and individuals have been yesterday and really where people are striving to be today. You'll see some acronyms in here. The one that I wanted to call out under lifecycle virtualization, the first bullet there, use SV to eliminate third-party dependencies. SV is service virtualization. So again, there's a lot in this slide, but again, as you're thinking about why and how and these different pieces around effective performance engineering, I've always found this to be a great way to help people start thinking about it, and something that you could bring to the table to share, well, here's what a quote-unquote maturity model could look like and some of the elements under each one of these pieces. Again, where is it that you fall today? Where is it that you want to strive to get to tomorrow? How are you going to do that? What are the value pieces that your business and your customers will get as a result of you making that investment? The other piece you'll see is on the first slide. I had the effectiveperformanceengineering.com URL. Also in the bottom left-hand corner is the EPE logo. So I had the opportunity to co-author a book with Shane Evans with O'Reilly Media. That book titled Effective Performance Engineering. And you will see this excerpt that I've pulled right out of the first page, talking about what is performance engineering, how it's representing this cultural shift, thinking about all of their essential processes, embracing those practices, embracing those capabilities, focusing on quality and performance throughout the entire organization, helping them to focus on and increase revenue, increase that customer attraction and retention, increase the brand value, and really focusing on competitive advantage, all while meeting and exceeding those expectations of the end users. So again, as we're sitting here thinking about performance engineering, what does it mean? How do you define it? This is the definition that Shane and I have included into our book. This is what the cover looks like. You can see with the bit.ly link here, if you follow that, it will take you up to the page where you can download your own copy. O'Reilly has been kind enough to allow us to promote this in a way that we can share this knowledge with you and with other individuals and teams, so that it's free to you to be able to read, learn, and share. So really that is the intent here. I think there's a lot of people in the industry that we've been doing this for a long time. We've always thought, hey, it would be great if someone can sit down and capture many of these salient points into some sort of a book and deliver it in other mechanisms so that more people can learn and ultimately share from all of our group experiences. So again, that's out there for you as another free resource that I wanted to make sure that you could get. As we kind of jump into these 4 ways to get started, the 4 that I've outlined and that we'll be talking through briefly have to do with culture, hardware, software, and the business. So again, in these 4 ways, or the 4 ways that we should start thinking about effective performance engineering, we'll kind of step through each of these and get into a little bit more detail and give some very specific examples. Some of these you will see do come out of the book as well, so that you can reference that in that context and be able to bring that to your organization. So from a culture perspective, how do you take a mission and vision of an organization and build performance into everything that you do with an end user focus? So this is often a question that Shane and I and others in the industry are getting. But again, a mission and a vision statement is great on the wall. How is it that you can take that, adopt that throughout the organization, and really focus on the right things? So that's the first kind of point from a cultural perspective. And I think what you find very interestingly enough, and I've highlighted 5 of these companies: Google, Wegmans, DreamWorks, Salesforce, and Apple. So again, kind of a variety of industries and verticals, but each one of them really focusing a lot on building that culture, building a culture that focuses and respects performance. Not only thinking about it from a technology perspective, but also the organization and also their customers. They've got a variety of different incentives that they have set up so that their employees are focusing on those right things. Again, this goes all the way through the organization, not only top down, but also grassroots, and also being able to then understand the very nitty-gritty details of the impact and the cost of every transaction in their system, seeking to optimize that to improve their overall business success. So again, there's a lot of different studies that you could look at throughout the book. I've got a few different sidebars where we highlight each of these 5 companies and then examine how they've built performance into their culture. So rather interesting there. One that I always like to highlight is that of Salesforce. So again, this being another excerpt from the book, and you can see in the upper right corner of this slide that here it is right on their website, and this was an employee survey that they had done, and it basically came up with at Salesforce, 93% of the employees say that their workplace is great. So again, thinking about that, they even use hashtag dream job as another way of sharing all of these and the passionate people that work there, focusing on what matters, winning as a team, and then also celebrating their successes. So again, as you think about that culture, being performance focused and thinking about that throughout the organization, I love this example from Salesforce, how they really embrace all of that in their culture, and you can see the results from this employee rating and study. Another area that becomes interesting is hardware. So this is number 2 if you're keeping track there. But as I think about hardware, again, it's maybe not sexy to some, very sexy to others. It's an area that I've seen pretty significant business value, where if you start getting into performance, shrinking those infrastructure needs or hardware costs is something you can pretty quickly do. As you can see on the slide, how do you take something that is often looked at as a commodity, transform it into a strategic asset, and have it both leveraged and also optimized? And the thing that's interesting here in this illustration is, today, thinking about things like your on-premise installs from a hardware perspective, comparing that to something like cloud computing. Again, these being two of the bigger conversations. I don't want to muddy the waters per se too much, but you also get into some, hyper converged models as well that become quite interesting. But you can see, again, there's software license fees, there's subscription fees under the water, and the things that you may or may not be looking at first and foremost are some of those ongoing costs. So again, this is just another illustration that I find extraordinarily helpful, that as you're out working with people, helping them to understand the business value of different items, this illustration really helps them to understand why performance matters and how, again, utilization of these perceived commodities will actually transfer them into a fairly strategic asset that you can leverage and optimize across your business. An excerpt from the book here we highlight, again, this is in chapter 1 still, but as hardware became more commoditized, the adoption of virtual infrastructure in the cloud became more prevalent, function taking a backseat to development in an effort to deliver business applications and changes faster. So again, this was kind of a historical look back. As we look at this kind of now and maybe into the future, it's definitely not an uncommon thing now to have multiple environments to support development, tests, production, failover, or DR. And then, while certainly more cost effective than ever, virtualization has given us the false sense that these environments are free. So again, I'd mentioned things like service virtualization, but as you think about how you can leverage a variety of different infrastructure scenarios for all of these development and pre-prod and even into production environments, it's really kind of an interesting way to start thinking about performance and thinking about how you can best optimize and leverage hardware as a strategic asset for your organization. Another illustration that I pull from the book is this, which I've used in a few organizations before. You can see this is on page 40. But what this illustration represents is showing how the flow of code moving through a developer's desktop into your BVT, your build validation test environment, then into a dev integration environment, into a QA environment, then moving again from that virtual environments into perhaps some physical environments where you get into pre-production and then production. So this is just a very simple illustration that I think helps really bring home the point around hardware and thinking about how we can leverage these investments effectively and in the right way, so that again, as we move through these quality gates, and I'm on the bottom part of this slide here from left to right, again, this should be all fully automated. You should be able to set these different criteria for what is acceptable to be able to move on, but then have that code automatically move through. Maybe there are a few manual touch points that you want to have in some of your later stage QA environments, or some touch points you want to have whilst you're in pre-production. But again, this is that visual. How is it you can leverage the investment of effective performance engineering into hardware and really being able to maximize that strategic value, not just thinking about hardware as a commodity. As we transition into software, how do you design, architect a platform and or system to be simple to maintain and scale while performing with very high security? So this is a challenge that many of us have found ourselves facing, I guess, on many different times. There is a little bit of magic here, but what I would suggest is in most organizations, there is not one team or not one culture that is kind of owning all of those elements. So designing and architecting it, thinking about the overall platform and or underlying systems. How do you make this simple to maintain it? How do you make it scalable? How do you make it perform? And how do you have it have high security? So again, I've been involved in organizations where this performance engineering team is made up of a handful of different folks from a variety of different teams that ultimately are accountable and responsible to deliver that level of software. So again, moving into an illustration from the book, one of the things you can see here is we talk about things like model view controllers, we talk about service-oriented architectures, also microservice architectures, but all of this being able to then reduce that number of points of change or failure, really improving the time to value when that new functionality is implemented. So this becomes a big focus for a lot of organizations today. And again, thinking about that software delivery activity, how is it that we can reduce that time to value for all the new feature function, ensuring that we're delivering it, again, maintainable, performing well, secure, all of the above. Um, the other piece that becomes interesting is the second bit that I've highlighted here, which is, in an isolated environment, it may be true. There's many other factors, however, that get introduced when you're building these large-scale and/or enterprise distributed systems that impact performance and also the end user experience. Some of these, again, are not directly attributed to software. Some of the bits that you'll see listed out here are things like network latency or individual component failures, client side behavior. Again, maybe you're on a mobile device that has a lot of other programs running on it at the same time, and that becomes a problem because your battery is overheating, or the CPU is overheating, or you're running out of memory on that client side. Again, there's a lot of different factors that come into play here, but again, how is it that you're building that into your software delivery cycle? So this gives that visual. Again, this is an illustration taken from the book on page 80, where we're highlighting this kind of intersection of workflows with tool chains and artifacts all through this build, test, deploy cycle. So I think this is a pretty fundamental one that, as you think about how are you adopting this across your enterprise organization, really sitting down, and it might just be as simple as, hey, we want to throw this up, put it onto a whiteboard and go ahead and mark off how is it that we're covering each of these different bits in our organization. Which of these are important to us? You can see there's a rather iterative aspect of the cycle here where there's 3 checkpoints throughout, fully automated, and then you get to a release decision, which could be automated or could have some manual intervention. All the way to the point where on the right hand side you have a deployed application. So again, this from a software perspective, again, I think another key illustration from the book that will really help you understanding these proven practices of performance engineering and how is it that you could start to adopt some of those capabilities today. I don't want to lose sight of the business. In some places you might focus more on the customers, you might focus more on the business, but hardware, software alike, we're not going to have anything that we need to do unless we have a business. So how are you focusing on the highest value items for your business and your end users to deliver these results quickly with quality? Again, I love this the image here where it says, you are the leader and you're unique, but you're not alone. So how many times do we perhaps find ourselves thinking, well, we're highly specialized, we're unique, we're different, but actually when you do think about your business, yes, you may be in a leader position, you may absolutely be unique, but at the end of the day, you're not alone. So again, as an effective performance engineer, how is it culture, hardware, software, but now the business, how are you focusing on these bits so that you can ensure that you're delivering those highest value items for your business, for your customers, delivering them not only quickly but with quality. So if we go to the book, again, you can see I've highlighted 3 different sections here. You can see these are largely taken from page 6 and 7, but one of the interesting statistics here is the Aberdeen group had done a survey of 160 companies. They found that a 1-second delay in response time caused an 11% decrease in page views, 7% decrease in conversations, and a 16% decrease in customer satisfaction. All that being interesting. Also, Google, which does some interesting things internally when they're testing their applications, but they had done some things in production that showed that click-through rates are correlated with revenue, so that a 20% reduction in traffic would have led to a 20% reduction in revenue. So again, as we think about these items, and think about how performance plays into your business, I think these are two very good data points to look at. The last one, or the third point here that I have highlighted, is a former employee of Amazon.com discovered that 100 milliseconds of delay reduced revenues by 1%. So again, very supportive of that correlation above that Google found, also from the Aberdeen group and that study that they had done in the findings. Again, we can very quickly see the business impact of poor performance engineering throughout your delivery cycle. This is an illustration of something that has been referred to as an information radiator. This was something that a group of Agile Scrum teams came up with. We've gone ahead and illustrated these first on a whiteboard. And what you can see there's two key metrics that we were measuring over time. One is percent commit done, and the second one is the number of production incidents. It may seem rather elementary to start, but it was actually very difficult for teams to quote unquote fake this data. So again, two very simple metrics that enabled us to tell a fairly interesting story. You can see, with the highlight, we're looking at the beta team. You can see their team average was at 94.33%, and their production team average of production incidents was at 6 total year to date. So these become pretty critical, especially when these teams start setting targets for things like, we want to get done 95% of what we commit to, and we want 0 production incidents. So anything that would be below 95%, or anything that would be greater than 0 production incidents, would be bolded then on this information radiator. Becomes interesting as the team starts asking the questions of themselves. What is it that we're doing wrong? Look at the Gamma team. They're nailing it. They're at 100%, and they've had 1 production incident over the first 3 months of 2016. So what is it we can learn from them? So again, focusing on that business value, the commitment of what's done to the business, as well as production incidents impacting the business. So these are really the quick highlights. Also, summarizing these 4 ways that you can get started. Again, thinking about the culture, thinking about the hardware, software, and then the business in each of those items that we just stepped through. Really, I want you to take this as an opportunity to, learn something new, share it with some other folks, connect with some people. It's all about collaboration and sharing these ideas. With that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the demo. So what you're going to see here, again, I talked about the 3 different free tools that you could download right now. I've called these prerequisites. I've also included the links that you can use to download these items. Again, the first one is Fiddler, second one is Watcher, and the third one is Black Widow. So Fiddler enables you to do many things. It's probably easiest described as a packet capture tool. Watcher is a security add-in for Fiddler, which will enable you to get some security results quickly. And then Black Widow is a web crawler, so you'll be able to point this towards a web address and then be able to drill in. So the other part that I always like to show here is it's free. So with that, let's go to our live demo. Great. So hopefully, that demo helps to provide, again, the area that I was hoping to cover. And I just wanted to wrap, as I was suggesting, with a few thoughts. So this is a very quick and easy approach. It's free. I can throw that up there again. Also very results focused. So as I started clicking through, again, you could see how there was a bunch of different results that you could dig into. Probably best to go in and look at a Fiddler overview, or a Fiddler demo, or some of the Fiddler documentation to see all the ins and outs of how we use Fiddler as a tool. Also, the same thing for Black Widow. A lot of configuration that you could use there to get some additional detailed results. It's easily visualized and interactive, so you could see how clicking through different pieces provided me with different sets of data, summarizing some of your outcomes. So you could see how very easily you could get to, hey, what are my high security impacts that I need to be able to look at? And within Fiddler, with the Watcher add-in, you can actually export those as well. So if you wanted to take an export and go ahead and make those available to your team to remediate them, again, very easy to do. You can change it into, say, a JSON file format and have that export. I've also implemented this in ways that it's fully automated to simply run in the background and then kick out a results file in whatever format you would like, and then import that into your tool or tools of choice. Enables you to start a conversation. So as we've been talking about effective performance engineering, I think this really, not only some of the illustrations and some of the other items from the book that I've shared, hopefully that helps you to start a conversation around effective performance engineering. But results like this, typically if I come in and I show results that are very relevant and near to the person whom I'm speaking with, they find this to be pretty interesting data and they want to learn more. So hopefully that enables you to start a conversation with someone. How do you do this today? So as you think about the demo that you just saw, as you think about the results that we just got, you saw it was very, very quick and easy. It was free, results focused. How do you do this today? This is something you should be able to start right now. And what would change? Another kind of retrospective question. Do you see it being able to change the culture of the organization that you work in, or just for you yourself? Does that help you change? Thinking about hardware, what are the things that you can improve on today as you drill into some of the details that are available within Fiddler? Can you get some things out there that will help you from a hardware perspective? Absolutely. From a software perspective, we could see a lot coming from that. And then from a business perspective, does your business owner think about these things? Would they be, interested, or at least learning a little bit more if you were to show them, again, just in a quick couple minutes, here's what you can do. It's very easy. Here's some of the results that we can highlight. So again, a few thoughts that I wanted to wrap up the demo with. I also wanted to share, again, here's the URL. Click on it, go to it. You'll see there's a number of different resources. There's a blog that I've got going. Also, you can click on Get the Book, and you'll see a few different formats that you can download it in, all for free and available to you right now. So with that, here's a couple more links to some things that you may find interesting, some areas that I frequently promote, some of the social media and some of the writing and speaking that I do, as well as many of the published assets. But again, wanted to just kind of take a break and answer any questions that you guys may have.